Alrighty guys, welcome back for more Path of Exile. So last time we left off on part 2 of the endgame, or it was part 12 of the full walkthrough. Our main goal right now is to explain the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch bosses. So what you're going to need to do is you just keep on playing maps. Eventually you'll see some NPCs on the map. If you see anything with a yellow exclamation mark, just talk to it and then you can hit skip because it's part of the progression. And then eventually you'll see these stones dropping. So there are actually 3 different stones that you're going to acquire as you just keep on doing more of your maps. At this point we're like almost done with the 115, which is like the most amount of maps that you'll need to do for your Atlas completion. So there are additional bosses that these ones you kind of need to do because they will also give you some points. So first off, the stones that you need to acquire, there's going to be the Maven's Beacon. You'll just play and eventually this will just drop. The other thing that will drop is a blue and a red orb. This is exactly what they look like. One of them is called the Luminous Astrolabe, and there's another like blue orb that you can pick up. It really doesn't really make too much of a difference. Just pick up anything that's green. Eventually these will drop. Now, once you have these drop, you just take them into your map device and you just click on it and it'll kind of unlock this thing. So what you're going to see first, it won't tell you how many maps that you need. It'll say like, you can click on either one of these. There's a red one and then there's a blue one and then there's one in the middle. The one in the middle is for Maven. This kind of technically is part of the progression if you want to get your watchstones. However, the Maven is a very, very difficult boss, and we're going to have to explain that later down the line. You can also hire people to defeat the Maven for you. The reason why is because no matter how many times I teach people how to do the Maven, even myself, I don't really like doing this boss. And the reason why is there's a memory game that you have to play, and if you don't play it correctly, you will lose. It's not anything to do with your character's build for the most part. You can be insanely tanky. This thing it will just absolutely obliterate you. It's not a very fun boss, I'm going to admit that. However, the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch are relatively fair. I mean, earlier on and in the gameplay, you'll see me actually fight these bosses, and we may die. These bosses have some mechanics where you're going to have to actually not get hit by them. You can make your character technically tanky enough to actually absorb some of the attacks, but earlier on, it's just good to go ahead and do these so you can get your watchstones, which will increase the difficulty of the map tier. As you can see over here, if I remove and add these stones, they will actually change the maps in terms of their map tier. Our whole goal is basically to get 115 of these maps done so we can get all of the Atlas points. That's like kind of how I like to play. However, eventually what you're going to do is you're going to select one of these and you're going to have to do a bunch of maps. Eventually, when you do 14 out of 28, and this is for both of them, you're going to get a Writhing Invitation and a Polaric Invitation. You can use these and you're going to actually acquire these by just playing, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys now that my character is a little bit stronger how fast we can actually roll this boss. Alright, so one thing I want to mention before you do this boss is try to take a life flask, and the reason why is because on a lot of boss fights you don't really need your movement speed as much as having just extra flasks. If you want to, you can actually just max out on flasks. Some people actually do like to play that way. But I just want to mention, just as a heads up, there are 2 different ways you can do some of these bosses. So certain boss mechanics are actually faster if you just die during them. I'm going to show you guys both ways. I'll show you guys the proper way in a second. I'm going to show you the more efficient way. The more efficient way is actually to die on the boss when he tries to suck you into the second layer of the level. So we're just going to put this in. Let's go and do it, and I'll show you guys the faster way to do it. But if you do die, you do lose XP, just as a heads up. But when you're at 0 XP, hey, it doesn't matter. So going right in, this is how this boss fight works. When he's coming up to you in his tentacle form, you want to move out of the way. That will do damage to you, and it hits you pretty hard. But we're actually going to die to it on purpose. So what we're going to do is we're going to do as much damage to him as possible, and once we see the level start getting sucked up by these poison, water, you'll see it in a second here. He will do it once his HP gets a little bit lower. He should be doing it relatively soon. So we got him about halfway down, right? See how he's in this form? See how the water is coming in? I actually want to die to him now. So I'm going to die to him on purpose, okay? The reason why we die to him is because we don't have to go to the second level. What happens at the second level, I'll show you guys, don't worry. But I'm showing you guys how to play this game at a higher level, just giving you guys that knowledge. So now I'm going to go right back in. And the other boss is so easy, you don't even have to worry about this. But this is specifically for the Writhing Invitation. Now I don't even have to deal with that thing. But you still have to not get hit by that thing. Well, we got hit by it. Our build's good enough. We survived. But sometimes that will kill you. it does hit pretty hard, but you can dodge it. And it's almost dead, and bam, we got 2 orbs out. You can farm this boss. There are some cool things that you can get. This is one of them. I was kind of just farming it just so I can have it for the video, but you can get different things from these bosses, and in fact, you'll see in just a moment, we actually get something pretty good from the other boss. It's just luck, though. That's like what I did was like a 100,000. Like, I got really lucky, I'll admit. But I just want to show you guys the proper way to do the boss, now that I've showed you guys the improper way, because I'm all about giving you guys the knowledge of, that some of the best players, they do things a little bit weirder, and during some of the other bosses, there are reasons why you want to die, because if you want to just avoid a mechanic completely, because I'm going to show you guys now what happens on that. But yeah, that's how you do these endgame bosses, and we're going to go ahead and cut to when I do these bosses, and then we're going to do the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch, which are much more difficult bosses. Right now, my gear is much better. I'll give you guys another update to the gear upgrade. I'll also link the website for you just in a second here. Essentially, once we get these invitations, we can do this. These are really, really easy. I recommend probably to carry a life flask, maybe instead of like the Quicksilver flask. So I'm going to go grab my life flask over here instead of the Quicksilver. And we are going to do these. Hopefully these will be relatively fast. So there's 2 different invitations. There's the Polaric, and then there is the Rithing invitation. Both of these, in order to actually get them, what happens is you just keep on playing maps, and you make sure that either this one or this one is selected. This one gives you the red one, this one gives you the blue one, and there is a boss. The bosses are relatively easy. There's like a harder one. This one has 2 different sides. One is a cold side and one's a fire side. Basically, there is a mechanic where you may want to do something based on a certain side. But honestly, I just ignore it. Trust me, this boss is not even worth it. Except for when they do Astral Avalanche, I think you want to be on fire. This is the only skill that might kill you. It's just a bunch of asteroids. There's a lot of them, though. But it's a really easy boss fight. Let's see, we just like one cycle. Oh, let's go! This is actually a pretty expensive item. Wait, what? 8 divines? Dude, we rich! Jackpot! This is actually good for our build too. No joke. This item is so good this league because everyone and their grandmother is playing a bow. Polaric, this thing is actually not too bad either. Wait, what? We just hit the double insane jackpot. Let's go! Alright, so that one was pretty easy. They honestly don't have like these good drops. I just got legitimately the jackpot of a lifetime. So now we're gonna be rich, but first we're gonna do the other boss. So that one, there is a mechanic where like there's a fire and ice side, and depending on the damage that they're dealing, you may want to stand on the other side. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Next up, the Rithing Invitation, and that's because our build is so good. I don't make bad builds. Except for like when I do, which is very, very rare. Usually I don't do those as like beginner guides. So I just make them because I'm like, oh, I could do something crazy. This boss is actually quite annoying. So mechanics with this boss that I do need to go over. So when he turns into a little like blobby tentacle, you want to actually get close but then rush away. You pretty much just stand far away. Ideally, okay, so when he's doing this, you have to wait for him to get close and then you dash. I did it too early that time. But that's what you want to do. There we go. I believe you can actually one-cycle this guy. So when the water starts getting really close, this is what makes this boss, like, ridiculous. So you want to see where the water is going. It's going in the, like kind of in the bottom right now. Oh, wait. The goal is working pretty good. You want to get out of this area as fast as you can. It's still going on bottom. Because you're going to build up these stacks of Corrosive Hunger, which make you take more damage. So now we're going to go to the left. And we're looking for the portal in the top right. There's a map that has the portal. And we're going to go to the arena. So we got a bunch of negative stacks. It's a debuff. It's not good. But that's what happens if you don't kill him fast enough. Now, we can kill him faster. But I got to show you that mechanic. So, again, once he goes, like, underneath, move out of the way. Oh, well, he didn't pop up. Sometimes he just likes to be a little bit difficult. We'll give him some extra targets, maybe, and move. There we go. He's actually kind of a cool boss. But I wanted to show you guys that mechanic. Now I'm just going to try to kill him before he does anything else. And this boss is easy, too. Okay. Unfortunately, we didn't get anything cool with them. But these bosses, some people do farm them. There's one pair of gloves called the Ceaseless Feast, which I think they're pretty good. I mean, is it going to be better than Thunderfist at this moment? No. but it can be actually okay for certain builds. But that is the Rithing Invitation and the Polaric one. Now, as we continue, what we're going to keep on doing is we're going to advance and we're going to get 2 more stones. But those are both the bosses that was done relatively fast, and we actually got really lucky. We hit the jackpot. But those are the 2 like mini bosses before we fight the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch. These bosses are much more difficult, but that was both the bosses defeated. Easy. I want to go ahead and do this. So what we're doing right now is the Screaming and Incandescent Invitation. So these bosses are special bosses, and they are bosses that do have some mechanics. This one is actually, I would consider, the easier one. So how do we get these invitations? So these are going to give us watchstones to increase the difficulty of the maps. So basically it's going to upgrade the map tier. So the red one I would say is the easier one to do, and I'll explain the mechanic as we go on in. And just a heads up, if it's your first time, don't worry if you die. These bosses aren't like super easy. Although I will say this one is the easier one. So the Searing Exarch will summon a bunch of meatballs, and during those meatballs, you don't want to get hit by those. So don't stand in any of the AoE. But our movement speed is pretty good, so we shouldn't have to worry too much about that. So these bosses, you're not going to like instantly one-shot, especially, you know, at the start. Just move, shoot, move, and shoot, and you should be okay at Searing. So when they do that, just walk to the edge. You see, it takes a while. But it's supposed to be one of like the end game bosses, so if you one-shotted it, it wouldn't be a very exciting fight. So this is the move where we gotta dip out. We want to not step on... Oh, this is the difficult part. If you have totems though, you can have the totems take the damage. It kind of cheats the puzzle, to be honest. So you can see... You just put the totems there, or you can do the summon skeletons. Oh, well, we got hit by one. If you get hit by one, it's pretty much a GG in a lot of different sim situations. But I didn't place it like perfectly. So he's doing that move. That move means get away. You'll see like the areas will start to darken. Disintegration. Cleansing. The fires of the thousands. Kind of got crossfired. Sometimes you'll get set up with impossible scenarios. Honestly, if I had a blue gem, I would, no joke, throw summon skeletons and just summon them right in front of me, and I would hold perfectly still, and it'd be like the easiest thing ever. Oh. Am I lagging? I don't know. We only got 3 more tries, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Incineration. If I got way more damage, it'd make it way easier. Oh, we want to move out of this, though. Okay. Disintegration. Cleansing. Annihilation. So we'll get in that culling range. There we go. And now we get a Void Stone. So the Void Stone is actually quite nice because what it allows you to do. Oh, there's a shrine that spawned in. Oh, I forgot I was running the goal on this. The goals might be kind of a useless item on this boss fight. But what you can do with the Watchstone is if we go back to town, or go back into our hideout, we can actually get we get Atlas passive. Stay vigilant. And on top of that, we can put this in our Atlas. So we can now put this over here, and what this is going to do is upgrade all of the maps that we've got. And eventually everything will be red maps, which is what we kind of want. So the next boss, this one is a little bit more difficult, I would say for sure. If you want to, I think taking a life flask. I think I have a life flask somewhere. Let's look for my life flask. Yeah, that one I would consider to be the easier one of the two. Where is that thing? There it is. So if you want to take it maybe over like the movement speed, that could be a good option. But yeah, this one is the one that I'm not a fan of. The reason why I don't really like this one is you have to be relatively fast because there's these orbs that spawn and we have to touch all of them, otherwise we basically get one-shotted. So that's the part of it that's not so fun, but we can do it.
This is not a battle you can win.
So as far as this boss goes, just keep on moving and shooting because there's a bunch of tentacles that come up and they'll whip you. And there's sometimes a wave of tentacles that will come out, and obviously I don't get hit by those as well. Oh, we survived that. That's good. The only real difficult attack, there's a bunch of tentacles that spawn in, but the only difficult move for most people with this boss is going to be when they actually have this mechanic where you have to. So you have to touch all of these spheres. If you don't, you will die. That attack, I don't think it's realistic to even survive, no matter how defensive you are. Laser's not actually that bad. So this is the spot that I don't like, because sometimes while did I get that one? Oh, we might actually die here. I don't know which one we hit. Where's the last one? Oh, I would say we survived it. No. Like I said, I don't know which ones we didn't charge. There usually is like some little indication and it becomes like kind of like glowing, but it's fine. Not a big deal. Especially since we have no XP from fighting the last one. Because when you lose XP, obviously, yeah, it's not good. Well, when he covers himself with a bubble, he just drops it right in front of him. So just move out of the way a little bit. It really sucks if you're playing melee, but since we're playing ranged, it's a lot easier. But yeah, you'll see them flash, but I'm pretty sure we had most of them. This is the move that gets usually people killed. Okay, there we go. We got all of them that time. Sometimes you get hit by it. It looked like we were kind of in between, but it's okay. We'll get them. You got 6 chances to get it down. And if you do it a little bit earlier than you're geared for, like I kind of am, like I'm still running my 4-link right now, set up with the Thunder Fist. They're still pretty powerful, but there we go. Now there's Chaos Orb. The bow, unfortunately, isn't really worth anything. So now we get both of the Void Stones, and we still had a couple portals. Used about half of them. I'll consider that still okay. Especially, again, if you're still running like a 4-link. We have a setup right now where I'm just using Thunder Fist for my damage, but it'll be okay. But yeah, getting the extra Void Stone, we're going to put that in our Atlas, and it's going to make everything much stronger. But that's the 2 other bosses, and you can still keep on doing them. And how you can get them in the very beginning also is if you're putting up a map that's high enough tier, like right now you'll see that it doesn't have enough tier, so usually I believe it's 14 or higher. I'll just grab a 16 just so it'll show the icon, but I believe it's, as long as it's a 14, like the map is at least a tier 14, you can select which one that you want. So you can see if I put this one in, I can select the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds. It doesn't really matter. But you can only choose one at a time. Once you do 28 maps, you can fight that boss again. The Eater of Worlds can actually drop, well, both of them can actually drop a pretty good expensive item. Yeah, that's how you can do these bosses again and again. So that's how you get 2 of the 4 stones, the Void Stones, to increase the tier difficulty of your map. Alright, so now that we have the bosses done, remember, I was using Thunderfist still at that moment, so I was only running a 4-linked item. It's technically a pseudo 5-link, but in terms of upgrades, it's kind of up to you on what you want to do for upgrades. Now, if you want to continuously play with the precise technique, by all means, there are a lot of builds that are still up on a lot of high amount of DPS that still use these. But if you do want to upgrade, I'm going to go ahead and mention, I'm going to link this down below. It has all of the, this is POB-IN, and basically it shows you the entire skill tree. It shows you all of the skills that I have linked. So it's like Dash with Second Wind, Sniper's Mark, linked with Mark on Hit. So right now I've swapped to a crit build. I'll go more in depth on this and we'll talk a little bit more about theory crafting as I want to do some more experiments with the new Crucible mechanic. And because it's a newer league, there's going to be things that require a lot of investment. And I don't want to give you guys the info on doing something that takes a lot of investment and then have it not pan out because it's brand new. So I would rather spend the money first and then I'll tell you guys, hey, this was absolutely worthless. A lot of streamers and content creators do this too, where they test something out and a lot of people will copy it and they'll be like, wait, this kind of sucks. And sometimes things are new, things have to be tested sometimes, not only via the actual game, but also being able to see the stats. So sometimes you can throw things in and it just works, but certain things have glitches, certain things like work, you know, non-intentionally or intentionally, and there are certain things that we'll have to factor in. But one thing that I do recommend most people to get, which will significantly increase your survivability, as I have now a 6-link bow, is just to get a Cost Breeze that is 5-link. Cost Breeze is super cheap, you can get it for just 1 chaos for a base one. You can get 5 links ones for just a couple more chaos, maybe like 10 chaos, but ideally you get this so you have chaos resistance. My main thing that I want to point out when you do some of these bosses and you're doing a bunch of these maps, now we're at like 109, we're almost done, we literally need 6 maps and then we're done with the entire maps here. Now there are 2 other watchstones that you can get and we'll talk a little bit about those later, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much content here. But in terms of the Atlas Pass, because I don't know if that one shows up, this is what I'm currently running. Feel free to screenshot, pause, whatever, copy it. But we will also continue on the next part, which will go over kind of what else you can do in the game. But I do want to highlight, one important thing is you need all your resistances maxed out. My chaos resistance is 3 off. If I pop this flask, we will have a lot more. But in terms of like the flask, and if you're wondering like what does he have equipped, everything is right here on the website, which will be in the pinned comment. That way I don't have to spend 10 minutes every single time. I could just be like, guys, check the link out. It explains everything. And like I said, I've swapped into crit. I'll go more in depth on explaining this, but if you're still playing with like just the Thunderfist, by all means stick with Thunderfist. It's fantastic. You can literally use it till the end of the game if you decide to go for it. As sometimes there are certain things, like I honestly got pretty lucky with these gloves. We'll talk a little bit more about crafting later down the line. But for beginners, I highly recommend just buy the item. Sure, I crafted this and I got lucky, but at the same time, certain other crafts can take hundreds or thousands of tries and you will never get it. I would recommend for most people, as a farming technique that I really like, every 28 maps you get a invitation. You can sell these invitations to other players, you can go to the trade tab, and they're about, it depends, they fluctuate. The best way to check is to go to peewee.ninja and check out what the prices are. This is a great website that I love. The reason why I don't always rely on the Awaken PoE trade is because it's sometimes not always the most accurate and people do things to kind of get around certain mechanics. But for the most part, the Screaming Invitation is the one that I like. You can do the Searing Invitation. It doesn't matter. They're basically worth 100 chaos every single time. So if you're completing maps on average, eventually you'll just do, what is it? I think you have to do T14 maps. Every 28 maps, which on average, if you're doing maps in about 2-3 minutes, it could take about a half, well, probably more than a half hour. I'd say on average maybe 2 to 3 minutes a map. It might take you about an hour to do all 28 maps, and every single 28 map you get basically 100 chaos orbs. Divines are about 180-ish right now, so take that with a grain of salt because prices fluctuate and they change all the time. But this is how I upgrade most of my gear, and this is a guaranteed way to get 100 chaos orbs minimum. And that's not even counting all the drops that you're getting on the maps. You might get raw divines as drops, and you can sell those for like 100 or whatever. But there's nothing in my build that's super expensive. I believe I played a divine for this bow, but other than that, everything else was bought really cheap and or crafted. Now, as far as crafting goes, I know what to search for. I have these things called live searches, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but this is like really far in terms of like the end game, and I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much content, but that's part of Path of Exile. There's literally so much to teach in this game. It's absolutely insane. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next part, which we'll talk about more about like min-maxing, and like Path of Exile is almost a game where you can never fully 100% get the every single roll to be perfect. It's just how it works, and especially with these crucibles, these things are kind of a nightmare to roll. And if you're wondering a little bit more about this, because I had a few people ask like, what should I be looking for? Because I've swapped my build. Honestly, I think everyone that's playing bow should look for Allocates Master Fletcher, because a lot of the bow nodes up until you get it, basically this gives you a free anoint. Master Fletcher. These 3 points are kind of bad. They used to be a lot better, and now you definitely want this, so you'll still end up getting these, but you could just skip out on all of these and just have 3 extra skill points, which is what I opt to do. But make sure, again, your resistances are high, and that way you can survive a lot more hits. And yeah, like I said, everything will be linked in the pinned comment, but if there's any questions, feel free to let me know, and I'll try to cover it in the next part of our endgame. But that is the Searing, Writhing, and you'll see me, even with these... some of these bosses, like the Maven, these are really tough. So if you die during these, don't worry. If it's your first time, I didn't complete the Maven the first time I did it. Very few people ever complete Maven the first time they do it. It's really hard, but don't be discouraged. I'm confident you can do it eventually. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out.